To discuss policing in Massachusetts and the reforms that she would like to see is State Representative Nika Elugardo of Boston. State Representative Elugardo, thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You're a member of the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus here in Massachusetts, which has introduced a plan to address policing. What are some of the big changes you want to see here?
Well, first we want to think short term, and we also want to think long term. In the short term, which means in the next few weeks, we want to file legislation for POST, and POST stands for Peace Officer Standards and Training. Peace officer is how we refer to the police in legislation. It essentially makes sure that police officers can be certified and decertified. So I'm a lawyer, I get licensed, and doctors and nurses need to do even more, right, to renew their license. Even my hairdresser needs a license. But police officers in 46 states need that, not in Massachusetts. So we want to make sure that we get that passed in the next, or filed in the next couple of weeks, and pass this session along with use of force legislation.
Does that effectively mean, the certification effectively mean that if a police officer is fired from one job, he or she can't just go over to the other town and get a job over there as a police officer?
That's exactly it. I mean, the details will determine under what circumstances that would be the case. But we don't want to just allow bad behavior to travel from one department to the next without the departments knowing what they're getting. And so it really is a common sense piece of legislation, and I think we're going to have strong support across the board.
We've heard the phrase defund the police a lot recently. It means different things to different people. What does it mean to you, and do you support it as an idea?
I support the movement to really think carefully about how we reprioritize funding, redirect funding. I don't like using the phrase defund as a legislator that's constantly asking my community police officers in particular to spend more money on some of the strong programming they have, for example, in free self-defense training for women. Some of that's done in overtime pay. And that's done because we ask the police officers that the community feels comfortable with, the ones who grew up in the community, know the community well, for example, to come at the times where women can make it. And so I don't want to, on one hand, be saying, like, fund these things I care about, these, and then using the phrase defund, but I stand fully behind the movement, because what we're really saying in that movement is we're not going to spend money on the things that are harming our communities or that are a waste of taxpayer resources. We want to redirect that money to social services and human services.
A lot of police officers right now are pushing back, arguing they have a tough job and that they're being painted with a broad stroke. How do you respond to them?
I think it's a really difficult environment because police on any given day are putting their life on the line. And it's one of those professions where the best of them go unnoticed. I think what's really important to note, though, is that we're not just talking about bad eggs. So I think Boston Police Department and many departments across Massachusetts are really lucky in terms of, we've got a lot of good eggs. We've got a lot of those community officers that I call up when I need help, and they show up. We have some slackers, like every single profession has, and I think the department tries to deal with those. However, structural racism isn't just about bad eggs. What it means is if you work the system as it's designed to work, it will produce racist results, disproportionate results based on race, also based on poverty and mental health, but even controlling for those things based on race. And so we have to do a lot of work, not only to shift the culture of policing, but to make sure that our laws are analyzed for structural racism and shifted. So POST is an example of that. The use of force law is an example of that, where police officers actually doing their job legally are committing acts of racial discrimination. And so we need to change that in order to protect our police force, and especially to protect our Black and brown and all of our community members.
Representative Nika Elugardo of Boston, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.